This is Speaking with the Enemy on the Ticats Audio Network. Here is Louis Butko.
Yes, the show is Speaking with the Enemy. The enemy this week, the Montreal Alouettes. And to discuss, we bring in my friend Joey Alfieri. He's a reporter, content creator, and social media manager for the Montreal Alouettes. Joey, always love connecting with you. Let's get right into it. Off the bye week, week 2. It's always a tricky time to take a bye week. You know, you come off a win at home, and then you got to sit for a week. How did the Alouettes handle this past week?
Yeah, look, I think they were trying to put as positive a spin on it as you possibly can. I think everybody said, for the most part, that they'd like to keep the momentum going after a week 1 win at home over Ottawa. But, you know, take the opportunity. Most of them, or a lot of them, went back home, saw some family that they hadn't seen for about a month. You get to recharge the batteries and kind of regroup and refocus for their first road game of the season in Hamilton on Friday night. So I think it's one of those things where you kind of just have to make the best of it. I mean, Toronto had the bye in week 1. I think Ottawa has it in week 3, or Hamilton has it in week 4.
Yeah.
So Hamilton has it week 3. Ottawa has 1. So, I mean, the East teams are just going to get the bye weeks early on, and you just kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah, one team coming off the bye, one team going into the bye, and both teams, you know, they look at these East Division matchups, and really throughout the last few years, Joey, I mean, we talk about how important they are, but the last few years, especially with how close the division is and how, you know, at par these teams have been. I mean, this is a huge early season matchup for an Alouettes team looking to start 2-0 and a Ticats team looking to avoid going 0-3 at home.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think it's massive. Like, if you're Montreal and you can come out of week 3 up 2.5 games on Hamilton and then up to 2 games on Ottawa, I think you're looking at that like, all right, we're off to a good start, but, you know, there's a lot of work that's still going to have to be done down the stretch. But, you know, look, in the CFL, you and I have both been watching for a long time. We know it's all about how you finish, but when you start reasonably well, you know, there's less digging out of the ditch that you need to do later on. So it's a massive game. Obviously, if Hamilton wins this one, it just kind of regroups the standings a little bit more and makes things a little bit more condensed. But if Montreal can come away with a win, then there's Montreal, Toronto, and then there's a gap, and then there's Hamilton, Ottawa. I think ideally that's what you'd like to see if you're an Alouettes fan. But if you don't have a horse in the race, you probably want Hamilton to win this game just to keep things tight. But listen, I wouldn't mind coming back to Montreal on that charter with a win. I'm not going to lie to you. But, yeah, no, it's definitely – I know it's only week 3, but it's a big game. It's a very fair point.
We can't talk about – no game to talk about week 2, so let's go all the way back to week 1 for these Alouettes. How big was it that, maybe if they didn't play their best football, and we'll get into some of the specific guys, Stanback, Fajardo, but how important was it that even at not their best, they were still able to pull out a win at home against a division opponent?
Yeah, I think it's encouraging. And you have the new owner, new head coach, a couple of new guys on the coaching staff, some impact players that were signed this offseason that made their debuts with the Alouettes. So to come out of there feeling good with a win is great. But like you said, it wasn't perfect. It was far from perfect. Defensively and on special teams, they said that there are things to correct. But, I mean, that's as close to perfection as you're going to get for a football team in a CFL game in those 2 aspects of the game. They were dominant on special teams, dominant on defense. Offensively, you got to protect the quarterback. I know it's easy to pin that on the offensive line when you give up 6 sacks, but, the quarterback has to shoulder some of that. The receivers have to shoulder some of that. The tailbacks do as well. So I think it's a collective effort. They insist. They've watched the tape. They've corrected what they needed to correct. So that's probably the biggest matchup I'm looking at going into this game is the Owls' protection up front against a veteran Hamilton front 4 and front 7.
Cody Fajardo, you mentioned the 6 sacks allowed. He played pretty good football, 14-20, 261 yards, no interceptions, ran for 1 as well. How has he looked in Montreal? How is he adjusting to a new city? I mean, we know these quarterbacks, they're the leaders on these teams. It's tough coming into a new city. We're seeing it here in Hamilton. How has Cody Fajardo adjusted to Montreal, and how has Montreal adjusted to him?
Yeah, he's embraced in the community. I think people here, football fans, they like mobile quarterbacks for the most part. And so, the fact that Cody can move, I think that endeared him to a lot of people right away. And then he's just such a great dude, comes across real well when you interact with him in front of the camera or not. But, just having been there for all of training camp, Cody was sharp. Cody was really sharp. I didn't know what to expect. I knew Cody from a distance. I knew the struggles that they had in Sask last year overall. But just coming in, like he looked like he had a chip on his shoulder, and he was laser focused from the very beginning. And I thought he was consistent and got better as training camp progressed. So I know that, I think he had 261 yards in week one, connected, had a nice connection with Austin Mack, Keon Julian Grant as well. They connected on some big plays. So, I think it's about, and I guess this comes with protection, but running the ball more effectively. You mentioned stand back before. I think they'll be able to do that, and spreading the ball around, get the other receivers a little bit more involved. But, I think what we've seen in Montreal from Cody Fajardo through training camp in a week, I think it's been as expected. It's been sharp.
Let's talk about Stanback. 16 carries, 43 yards. That works out to less than 3 yards per carry. You tie that into the offensive line struggles, the 6 sacks. Is that kind of one and the same? And what are you looking for when it comes to building consistent or trying to readjust, make those adjustments that you need to make to protect Fajardo and to give Stanback a little more space, a little more time to find some holes?
Yeah, for sure. I think the encouraging thing is that they were really patient with the run game. I think there was a stretch in that game where it didn't work, and they kept going to it. They didn't want to become one-dimensional, and I kind of like that. The other thing that's kind of lost, and I know most people are just looking at the average, but Steinbach was telling me last offseason in 2022 that he had really worked on his hands and catching the ball out of the backfield, and we didn't really get to see it much last year because he was hurt. But he had the 4 catches in the game against Ottawa, which tied a team high. He had one for, I think it was 29 yards near the end of the game that helped, run out the clock. So that's an element of his game that he showed off in week one that I think some people are sleeping on. They didn't really notice because the rushing totals weren't where they were supposed to be. But the one thing with Stanback is, I was really curious to see that burst pre-injury, was it going to be there? And very early on in training camp, first of all, he's in amazing shape, looks great. And then I think it was the first week of camp where, he kind of ran. There's very little contact in camp, but at one point he just turned on the jets and I was like, oh, okay, that burst is there and probably better than ever. So not concerned about the running game. I do think that it's going to work out. I think there's going to be some games where people are going to come away really impressed by what the Owls are able to do on the ground. And I think getting Cody Fajardo to run, use some design runs with the quarterback will help create confusion in the backfield for the opponent. So I'm not really worried about the run game. I think it's going to come with time.
Yeah, Herb Zurkowski's got a great piece on the slim down William Stanback, and obviously comes down to durability and making sure he's out there more than not. Let's talk about Ciante Evans, a name that Ticats fans are obviously very familiar with. What a debut last week, a couple weeks ago, 2 interceptions. What does he bring to that Alouettes defense? I mean, how is he being looked upon? Is he being looked upon as a leader in that group with his experience? Where's he at in this group?
Yeah, 100%. I think the secondary as a whole has been sharp throughout training camp, but having him and Wesley Sutton at the 2 halfback spots, those are as close to lockdown DBs as you're going to get in the CFL. And I think people in Hamilton saw that. Ciante Evans, not the loudest guy, not the most flamboyant guy, but people in Montreal saw it as well in 2019. He had a really, really good season with the Alouettes before going to Hamilton, and he kind of just picked up where he left off. He's a guy who's very sticky. He can, hang around. He had the tough task of covering Jalen Acklin in week 1 and did a reasonably good job, or a very good job. I think he was targeted 4 times. There was 2 of those were interceptions, and one was a tackle for a loss. The other one was incomplete. So, I mean, it was as perfect a performance as you can get. But that secondary as a whole, and don't forget, I mean, they signed Jamal Roll, who ended up retiring. So he would have been another veteran there from Hamilton that would have probably started when everything's said and done. But with Nafis Lyon, Wesley Sutton, Mark Dequoy, Evans, and Deontay Ruffin, the secondary has been very, very good. They had 3 interceptions against Ottawa, and they have Najee Murray, who's playing a new position as the Sam linebacker, replacing Darius Pickett. So from a secondary standpoint, it was really impressive what they were able to do, because that's arguably, after quarterback, that's probably the toughest job in the CFL, is covering these receivers. So yeah, it was a really good, really, really, really impressive performance from Ciante Evans.
Yeah, secondary was great. I mean, the front 4, front 7 weren't able to get any sacks. You have to be thinking they're licking their chops. So looking at this Ticats offensive line that's dealing with injuries, I mean, Kyle Saxlid's on the 6th game. I mean, it's really some pieces that need to be filled there. A new quarterback in Matt Schultz, who likes to scramble. How do you think the Alouettes will attack Schultz in this one. How do you think they'll try to attack the run game to slow down James Butler?
Yeah, they had the one sack in week 1 with Jamal Davis late in the game, but yeah, I think it's a little different when you go up against Schultz than when you go up against Bo Levi. I think the opportunity, along the offensive line, like you said, they're banged up, so I think there might be some opportunity to get some heat on the Hamilton quarterback. But I think the priority is, you want to rough him up, but you want to keep Matt Schultz in the pocket as much as you can. Like, you don't want to allow him to scramble and beat you that way, because you know that he can do that too, and he can make plays in the pocket as well. So I think it's about containing him, and then if you get some hits on him and you can put some pressure on him and force him into some bad throws, I think that's the way that I'd approach it if I was Noel Thorpe in that defense, but they know a heck of a lot more than I do. So I'll leave it to them.
The Montreal Alouettes have released this pretty cool thing. It's a 52-minute kind of documentary series, Inside the Nest. Tell us a little bit about this. I'm sure a lot of work went into this. Really cool feature on Alouettes on the website on YouTube there.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and you can watch it on MontrealAlouettes.com. It's basically, it's a version of Hard Knocks. We got a camera crew who've actually done some work for HBO on Hard Knocks to follow the team around. They're out of Montreal, and they did a really good job just with following some interesting storylines from Cody Fajardo to the young receivers to some Canadian rookies. It was really, really well put together. The first time I saw it, I was blown away by the quality and just how interesting it was. It flies by. It doesn't feel like an hour. But yeah, I think I tweeted this. I don't think only Alouettes fans are going to enjoy it. I think if you're a fan of the CFL, you'll enjoy the access that you get into the coaches' rooms, into the meeting rooms when coaches and the general manager are, listing players that the first cuts that they want to make. I think it's a really cool behind the scenes experience. So I appreciate you mentioning it, and should definitely check it out.
Before I let you go, the show is Speaking with the Enemy, but let's talk about a common enemy. Are you all aboard the Chad Kelly hype train that the rest of the league seems to be chugging along here? I mean, where are you? What'd you think of that last game? And again, get your thoughts on the Ticats struggles through the first 2 weeks as an outsider. What have you seen from them? And again, are you on the Chad Kelly train?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the more good quarterbacks there are in the league, the better. I mean, one game doesn't make a career, contrary to what some people in the media might tell you. But no, I thought he played well. I thought he played really well. I thought the Argos were sharp, for a team that had the week 1 bye, like we mentioned earlier. They looked really good defensively. They were able to make some plays. Obviously, they roughed up Bo Levi a little bit. And with Hamilton, I'll be honest with you, like I know people in Hamilton are not going to be happy with the 0-2 start, but I really don't think they're far off. There's a couple of big plays that they didn't hit on in week 1 in Winnipeg. There's some timing issues, I think, still just trying to put some new pieces together on offense. But, I really don't think that Hamilton's going to be one of those teams that's going to be in the cellar for too long. I think they're a team that's going to compete week in and week out, just get a little healthy. But I'm not overly concerned for the Tiger Cats. I do think they have a pretty good team.
Like you said earlier, it's only week 3, but this is a pretty big East Division matchup. Yeah. So, Joey, I appreciate you helping us set it up. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me.
My thanks to Joey Alfieri from the Montreal Alouettes for joining me today. And hey, speaking of those Alouettes, Journey Rewards wants to help fuel your away game. You can enter for a chance to win an away game trip for 2 to go see the Ticats take on the Montreal Alouettes on Saturday, October 28th. All you have to do is stop by your local Pioneer gas station, scan the QR code, and fill out your info on the landing page, and you could win 2 game tickets to go see the Ticats take on the Alouettes in October, a 2-night hotel stay, $250 in Pioneer gas cards to help you get there, and a Ticats swag pack. Go to ticats.ca for all the info on that one. That'll do it for us today. I will be back in 2 weeks because there's no show on the bye week. So we'll talk to you to set up week 5 here on the Ticats Audio Network. From all of us here, I'm Louis Butko. Hoping you have a great day.